coffee, tea, and rum. One day the tonguing is done, take our leave and go. At a fair in the sun of town, her hair was blonde and this was around. She made a whaler man come around.
I woke up early on the morning of day 2, feeling rested enough. I typically don't sleep that well camping until the second night, because by then I'm usually totally exhausted. There's nothing like cowboy coffee in the woods. It's taken me a while to master the art, but I think I've finally got it down. This kettle has served me well over a number of years. The fact that I can already see a noticeable breeze rustling the leaves in the trees is a good sign, as it was very early and it takes the wind a while to wake up. I had heard a pretty loud slapping sound in the middle of the night, and I was afraid that the boat had come unsecured somehow and was up against the rocks, but I walked down to check on it, and it was just waves slapping the hull at kind of a funny angle. The previous day I had noticed a comically small island on the way into camp, and I thought I would go and check it out before getting underway on day 2. Rowing out from camp, I passed an elderly couple fishing out of an aluminum boat, and they had to look twice at me. I think they were wondering if they had been transported back to the 1800s by the look of my boat. This was for sure the smallest island I've ever explored out here. It was only maybe 25 yards across in any direction. I noticed a lot of beaver sign, and there was also a peculiar clearing where I can see that deer or some other large mammal had been bedding down. So they were either swimming out here or the water is low enough that they can wade in the fall and winter months. Upon departing the island, I was excited to see that the wind had shifted dramatically south and was now definitively at the stern. Having made Camp 1 just north of Bobcat Point, I had turned to a new page on my chart and was now sailing north for Eddyville Ferry, one of the possible designated takeout points. Put Craven's Creek and Mammoth Furnace behind us, and I was eager to keep going, but I remembered the previous day I had got a little bit too much sun exposure, and I made a note to myself to stop and rest in the shade every now and then. It's particularly important to take care of yourself on a trip like this, especially when sailing solo, as you're really relying on your body and your wits, and you need to keep yourself in the best condition possible. This passing bass boat, what my dad would call a hog rig, was one of the few craft I saw all day. The woods looked inviting here, so I decided to strike out on foot and make a short loop, following the ridge overhead. This is an active den of some kind, maybe a fox or coyote. This armadillo skin may be a surprising find to those who are unaware that these critters are making their presence known in the north. North of Texas, that is. These critters are all over LBL, and I run into them all the time. Kind of funny little animals. The day was heating up, and I stopped again briefly to cool off in the water. I passed Eddyville Ferry with plenty of daylight to spare. I had told my dad that that would be the most likely takeout point, but I had made excellent time and still had the entire afternoon and a whole day tomorrow, so I would be getting taken out much farther north than expected. Across Barkley to the east, this is the Kentucky State Penitentiary, known locally as the Castle, and it's easy to see why. Running before the wind often doesn't feel as fast as it actually is. Like a fish swimming with the current, me and my little boat were ticking away the miles, sailing wing on wing down a long, straight stretch of the lake. Sadly, the long downwind run would come to an end as I came to the westward bend of the Cumberland. The shoreline of LBL turned sharply, putting our sails close to the wind and slowing us down quite a bit. And on top of that, I would also be coming into the lee slowly of LBL, blocking the wind to a degree. At first I thought this duck blind may have been placed here intentionally, but when I got out I noticed there were no lines attached to it anywhere, so I guess it must have drifted away from somewhere. This is one of the nicer and more elaborately constructed blinds that I've encountered out here. It was getting late in the day, and I had two problems that I needed to solve at this point. Firstly, I was starting to run low on water, and it was time to find a clean source that I could filter. Worst case, I could filter the lake water if I had to, but that really just doesn't sound appealing to drink the lake water in any form. It's not always the cleanest or the clearest during summer. And secondly, I needed to think about finding a campsite soon. I was beginning to get a little stressed as I wasn't making much progress trying to get back into Carmack Creek. Sailing just was not getting me very far at this point due to wind speed and direction. So I turned to the oars, and I was going to have about a mile to row back into the creek, which was also taking me off course, but I figured I would make camp somewhere back in Carmack Creek. I finally reached the stream that feeds Carmack, and I waded up as high as I could until I saw that the stream was very narrow and mostly rainwater, and not perfectly clear of sediment, but clear enough. I filled my empty gallon jugs here, and I decided I would worry about filtering it when I get back to camp, or rather when I find camp. The sun was getting low in the sky, and I was still exhausted, and I was getting a little bit stressed about finding a place to sleep for the night. I thought maybe I would be able to camp directly by this stream, but it was just too overgrown. I really wasn't liking it, and I wouldn't be able to get the boat far enough upstream to make that practical. Begrudgingly, I got back in the boat and started rowing again. And this was some of the longest, most grueling rowing I think I've ever done. And I'm actually someone that enjoys rowing, but it's not enjoyable when you have to do it, and you're already dog tired. I didn't have time to really shop around for a campsite, but there was one spot I knew of that was right on the bank. I was relieved to find this site unoccupied, and frankly, I was lucky. I really do prefer camping remote. Maybe some people would consider this site remote. It would definitely be considered backcountry camping. In my state of exhaustion, it was really nice to have a place that was right on the water and level. There would be no hauling of the gear over land tonight. I could just pull up to the shore and get out and camp. There was even a log to sit on. 5-star accommodations. The only downside to this camp was noisy neighbors. Luckily, I carry earplugs. The steady southerly wind of day 2 allowed me to travel 15 miles running before the wind, and that achievement completely blows out of the water yesterday's measly 7 miles. Someday I hope to surpass that distance, but it would nonetheless be a memorable experience. It's easy to see how small sailing boats could have been a very practical means of transportation for people in the old days. That would of course depend on having the right body of water and the right winds, but I can see firsthand how you could really get around in a boat like this. Join me on the next installment for the highs and lows of day 3 and a dash for the finish line.